Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show on this 23rd of January, 2024, I should say. A Tuesday. Thank you for tuning in. Glad to have you guys here. Let's get started. Let's take a look at what's going on out there in the world. Now, this is a big story. And a lot of them are probably missing it. A lot of people are probably missing it. There's a big meeting going on with 5 Arab states, and they've offered Israel normalization in exchange for a Palestinian state. It says that 5 Arab states, including Saudi Arabia, offered Israel normalization in exchange for a Palestinian state, the Wall Street Journal has reported, adding that the joint proposal has been submitted to Israel via the United States. Israel's far-right government, led by Benjamin Netanyahu, is, however, against the two-state solution. This is a diplomatic effort to end the war in Gaza. So that's what's going on right now. And I mean, this is big. I mean, they're all meeting and everything, you know. We'll have to see what comes out of this. Now, in the United States is renewing their strikes on the Houthi rebels and their targets in the Red Sea, and their attacks continue right now. It says another round of missile strikes has been fired on Houthi targets in Yemen. Canada and Australia are among the countries lending their support to the United States in this joint military effort. Monday night brought bombings, warships and submarines launched, and Tommy Hawk missiles. Boy, those Tommy Hawk missiles, you know, guys, are really expensive. This is costing a lot, but there's a lot at stake because the ships can't go through the Suez Canal properly into the Red Sea without being attacked. This has a very big impact on world trade. And it doesn't seem to be... The Houthis are like... Wow. Are they ever fighters? It reminds me of... you know, there was a time in America back in around before 1776, you know, back when the Americans... They were tremendous fighters. You know, and in a way, you know, I mean, what's happened from the baby boom generation until now has been soft, easy times. Being as the United States holding the world reserve currency and the deals that Kissinger made for the with Saudi Arabia to be the world reserve currency, those deals made it into what's called the petrodollar. And it's created soft, easy times. And there's also been an expansion of credit during these times. And so the Houthis in Yemen are poor. And I think this is part of what, if people grow soft, if they have easy times. I don't really know exactly what I'm trying to say here, but I think you guys get my point, you know. Anyway, let's move on and take a look at this. An Airbus 330 flight was canceled after a passenger spotted 4 missing fasteners on the wing, you know, and it shows a picture of the Airbus, you know, and it shows a picture of the 4 missing fasteners here he spotted on the wing. Basically 4 missing rivets on the wing. The passenger spotted them. I guess he notified the flight crew on the aircraft, and probably everybody was on board ready to take their trip. And you can just imagine they had to pull in, it probably kept everybody on board to make their trip, you know. And they examined the flight, and they examined the plane, and they were probably examining it for hours. But the flight was eventually canceled, you know. Now, I'm wondering how the passengers on that plane that experienced that would have related to the passenger who spotted the 4 missing bolts. Would they have been mad at him, or would they have been like, yeah, maybe this is a good thing that the plane was stopped and we didn't get our flight and we had to get a hotel for the night or whatever, and had to wait on the plane. Maybe, I don't know how long that they had to wait on the plane. Might say here. But at any rate, my opinion on it is I think that passengers should be vigilant, because what could have happened? I mean, the plane could have fell apart. Could have. Probably wouldn't have. With just 4 rivets missing. Because there's thousands of rivets on an airplane that hold it together. Now, China is thinking that they're going to, and they're weighing in on a $278 billion rescue plan to stabilize the markets in China. According to Bloomberg report, China may enact a rescue package worth 2 trillion Chinese yuan, equivalent to upwards of 278 billion US dollars, to stabilize markets after massive losses tied to the pandemic. The stimulus plan aims to buoy the struggling Chinese economy and failing equity markets. So they're thinking about propping up their system. I'm going to tell you guys what. I think that we're soon going to have to prop up our system as well. I think we're going to experience what they've experienced in the last 6 months in China here. Of course, it's going to be very inflationary, guys. We went through this little period of disinflation. Not deflation, disinflation. And also stagflation. It's been a stagnant economy. Let's face it. People are losing jobs. They're not. If they are gaining any jobs, it's jobs that are like people taking on a second job. I don't know, 20-hour a week sort of thing. It's part-time stuff. And then they count them as jobs. But full-time jobs are being lost in a greater amount than the new part-time jobs that are being created in the system. And the economy is totally gone stagnant. Workers' wages are not keeping up with inflation. And this is, by definition, stagflation right now. But we're headed toward hyperinflation in the not-too-distant future. Because, let's just face it, you cannot print to oblivion. In other words, create new monetary units in the system, willy-nilly, this way and that way, without it being inflationary eventually. And I know the Fed has went through this long program of trying to stabilize and bring down inflation, but all it's doing is slowing down the economy. And eventually they're going to have to release that again. Release that garden hose of money. And that's what's coming, not too distant. I'm going to tell you, you're going to see it, part of it in the bond market. I mean, they're having to make all this issuance going into the debt market. Who's going to be the buyer? I mean, they can see out there, it's very clearly obvious that it's a balance sheet that's going off the hook. And I know bonds have been the big thing over the years, but this can only yield higher yields on the bonds to make them more attractive to investors. Italy wants to use its chairmanship in the G7 to change the narrative about Ukraine. So basically, let's take a look in here and see what the new narrative is going to be. It says Italy will chair the Group of 7 this year and plans to use its position to change the narrative that Russia is allegedly winning in Ukraine and that the West has grown tired of the war. They want to change that narrative. Italy will chair the G7, which also counts the United States, Japan, Germany, UK, France, and Canada as its members. In 2024, the G7 Leaders Summit will be held in June. Voicing Italy's priorities for the first time, The source reported that the main issues on the summit's agenda will be the conflict in the Middle East, trade security, climate change, development in Africa, relations with China, and artificial intelligence. The war in Ukraine will be a key issue, as it was during the last two chairmanships of the group. The source added that the G7 leaders are determined to demonstrate their unwavering loyalty to Kiev and cannot risk showing signs of weakness 2 years after the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Quote unquote, "We must change the narrative concerning Ukraine," the source stated, adding that Russian President Vladimir Putin has lost a significant amount of financial, military, and diplomatic influence after the invasion. Now, meanwhile, there was a massive missile strike in Ukraine, and people are trapped under the rubble in Kharkiv right now due to a Russian missile attack in Ukraine in the morning of January 23rd. A residential building entrance in Kharkiv has been destroyed, trapping people under the rubble, according to the mayor of Kharkiv. So the war goes on in Ukraine. We do have prospects, though, of the war ending, perhaps, in the Middle East with this new deal that they're working. But it requires a two-state solution sort of a thing, you know. Go back to that again. See? Exchange for a Palestinian state. I guess that's what is that the same thing as a two-state solution? I think it is. Now today, you know, what we got going on in the gold and silver market is we're seeing the silver price go up today. 22.31. Now what I wanted you guys to notice this is the game they're playing. And I've stated this for a while now. They let the price run up to more or less around 24 bucks. Maybe 24 and change, and then they knock it back down to maybe 21.50, 22 bucks, long in there. And it's just a cycle that we've been in for a long time now. And it's all got everything to do with market manipulation of the price. How they manipulate it is by using paper short contracts. I know you guys have heard me say this a lot before, but there's a significant price associated with getting silver. All the silver you buy at these silver dealers and stuff, it's all just been mined recently. If you want to go out and buy some, say, Canadian Maple Leaf coins, they were likely in the ground last year. And it's not a simple process. It requires a lot of energy, fuel. Of course, fuel prices are not that exorbitant right now. But, you know, with this war threatening in the Middle East, a lot of changes could happen really quick with that concerning the overall production cost of silver. You know, but then again, on the other side of that coin, if we see some sort of a depression slash worldwide not really a depression, but what they call a recession, global recession, we could see that negatively affect the price of oil, you know, and therefore if it does and the oil price goes down, fuel costs get cheaper, the cost of production of silver goes down as well. You know, will we ever see $15 silver again? I don't think so. You know, but I think it's more likely with the way the currency the currency's going, being the fiat currency's losing value. I think that this is kind of like a floor in around the $22 range. And so right now, basically what I'm trying to say is, I think we're sitting on the floor, on the bottom floor, right? Because of the inflationary effects that's going to happen to the dollar when they have to re-stimulate the economy. So, but you got those two factors working against one another. if we go into a recession, a worldwide global recession, it is going to lower fuel costs, and that does affect the bottom line of how low production costs can go on silver, because it's mostly energy dependent. Primarily, I think, mostly diesel fuel. I mean, the big machines, they operate off of hydraulics, and the hydraulics have to have a diesel engine to keep the pressure up. And that's what they consume, you know, rock crushers, and it basically works. I mean, maybe I'm talking about this a lot. Maybe you guys don't know, maybe you do know. But basically what they have to do is dig in, haul out big rocks, and crush them into smaller and smaller rocks until they get it down to basically a powder. And that takes an awful lot of energy. Moving on to the gold price today. 2024 for the gold price. It's up $2.90. Better to see it go up than down. It's been in the... But you know, cryptocurrency, it's taking a beating right now. Might have something to do with Mt. Gox. I think it... Didn't Mt. Gox have a tremendous amount of coins? You know, and this is the thing about it. When Bitcoin was in its early days, you know, when there was millions of them floating around, they weren't worth hardly anything. There's players out there that have huge wallets. We call them whales. And, you know, when these wallets come online, they can appear. Like Bitcoin can be going along good and everything else, and the price going up and everything, and all of a sudden one of these whale wallets can appear online out of nowhere. And that can negatively affect the price of Bitcoin, you know. There's another fly in the ointment for Bitcoin, and an awful lot of people don't talk about it. It's because it's such a remote possibility, and people that invest in Bitcoin don't know. A lot of people that right now, I'm going to mention something that a lot of people don't know about Bitcoin. It's called a 51% attack. Now there's a network, Bitcoin network, and it's made up of computing power. Miners make up the computing power of the Bitcoin network. How that network is controlled is by a 50-50 sort of a deal. Right? If you have your computers and they have a significant amount of power that is more than 50% of the hashing network, in other words, you're hashing, and that's what's called when you're solving the algorithms, called hashing. If you can hash more than 51% of the network, then you can actually control the network. And you could do almost whatever you want. You could actually destroy Bitcoin even with a 51% attack. And why it's not talked about is because it will require an immense amounts of hashing power. We're talking in scale, quantum computers maybe could do it. But it would require such an immense amount of electricity and an immense amount of hashing power that nobody even talks about it. But it's still there. It's called a 51% attack. And it's a vulnerability in the Bitcoin network. And I don't know if it'll remain a vulnerability forever. But it was, is, and has been a vulnerability in the Bitcoin network. Taking a look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average. It's down 171 points on the day at 37,830. Now, taking a look at crude oil. Crude oil is up 29 cents at 75.05. You know, it's been creeping up lately. Crude. It's been creeping up. You know? The world, I think, is sensing that right now, big time, that there's going to be, the central bank's going to start to relent on these policies of tight monetary policy. And not too far in the distant future. In fact, you know, if we take a look here at the bond market, we see bond yields creeping up. The U.S. 10 years now to 4.14%, and the U.S. 30 years at 4.38. And the 10 years creeped up 5.3 basis points, and the 30 years creeped up 6.5 basis points. So here's the story, guys. If they have all this new issuance coming out on these treasuries and these bonds and into the debt market, especially on the long end, it's going to be very difficult for them to keep these yields from creeping up, because let's face it, foreign buyers now are just like shunning this to a certain degree, you know. So who's going to be the big buyer? Well, the big buyer has been the Fed. And, you know, when we see these yields creeping up too high, they can't let that happen. You know? So what are they going to do about it? It's called yield curve control. And I can see it coming, but maybe it's here already. Maybe they're just not telling us. That thought has went through my head. And they can control the yields all the way out to the long end, because I see these yields, I watch them day after day, you know, and like they'll start going up, creeping up like they are right now, and then all of a sudden they'll get these days where they drop rather substantially. Who's the big buyer? You know, makes you wonder. Taking a look here at the US dollar index today, at 103.76. Our dollar is climbing today. We see it going up. Listen, guys, push the thumbs up button for me. Thank you guys for listening to my show. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. That's important to my channel. And thank you guys, and we'll catch you guys in the next show, and have a great day. Bye-bye.